So today's lesson is the lesson of the mustard seed. Now, most of us have probably heard of the lesson of the mustard seed, and most of you have probably had some sort of teaching that goes along the following lines. The mustard seed is the smallest of all the seeds, which will grow to be the greatest of all the trees. So you, my little mustard seeds, should become great sequoias. Right? Who here's heard that? Some long line, right? Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of problems. See, first of all, we as Lutherans do not see a conflict between science and religion. We see science as merely telling us how God is doing things. So here's the thing. Mustard seeds are not the smallest one. You know this, right? Who here's had an everything bagel? Okay, there's a lot on that that's smaller than a mustard seed, folks, right? Okay? And, well, none of you, I'm assuming, has anyone here ever actually grown a mustard tree? No worries. It doesn't grow in Pennsylvania. Okay? Mustard trees, in its modern agricultural thing, will grow from anywhere from like 8 feet, because I'm 6 feet tall, to like 12 feet. But in its ancient times, they weren't that big, because this is due to all sorts of wonderful farming techniques that we've learned over the years, with the wonderful help, which is science. And ancient times, they were like 4 feet to 8 feet. So when we look at this, when Jesus is saying, have a faith the size of a mustard seed, you will be a grand tree, what we got to remember is Jesus being sarcastic. He's making a joke. Because the disciples have come to him and say, Jesus, we would like to do no work, but please increase our faith. And he's like, oh, great little mustard seeds of mine. If you would have faith just this big, you could do amazing things. You could tell the mulberry tree, which, by the way, that's big, and go jump in the lake. Go sit in the ocean, and it would obey you. Now, I own my house, and I have a dead mulberry tree, and I've tried multiple times to tell it to leave, because I personally don't want to have to get out there with a chainsaw, and it has not left yet. So if any of you have that ability, please come over to my house and tell my mulberry tree to leave me alone. Okay? Here's the thing. When we talk about faith as Christians, we have to talk about it, we talk about it usually as an individual thing, like my faith, my relationship with God, and that's perfectly appropriate. But faith is not simply just an individual action. Faith is actually meant to be a communal action, because it's so much easier to have faith when you're around faithful people, right? So to get at what Jesus is trying to get at with this mustard seed thing, I want to change plants for a minute, okay, to a plant that we've all actually dealt with. How many of you out there are gardeners? Raise your hands. Gardeners, got a few gardeners. Most of you all probably have at least a little bit of land somewhere you could garden if you so endeavored, right? Right? You have something, right? Now I can tell you, and I mean this for the people here, I mean it for the people all around the world that could be watching us on Facebook, right? Because you never know, right? So here's the thing. I can tell you that if you have a plot of land anywhere in this country, in this continent, on any continent, and in the world, Antarctica included, by the way, and it comes around to your springtime, I can tell you something. Universally true. And that is somewhere in your yard. Known or unknown to you, but known to God. There's a dandelion. Right? And where there is one, there will be thousands if you do not catch it, right? Because the first thing that dandelion's going to do is it's going to be a nice little yellow flower, and then if you do not take care of it right then and right there, it's going to become one of the white flowers. And once it becomes a white flower, what happens, folks? And the second that set of seeds gets sent out, what do you have but a small field of dandelions? And I don't care how much Roundup you've used. I don't care how diligent you are at pulling them out of your garden. I don't care what you've treated with, who you've hired, but somewhere there will be one, and where there is one, there will be many. Now, back in the ancient world, mustard trees weren't that different. There's a reason we eat their seeds. Not just because they're yummy, but because they are a lot. And wherever one of those little seeds fall, a new mustard tree starts. And you'd think, well, I'll just cut down the mustard tree. That's fine, but it's going to sprout way over there and over there and over there and over there, because what you just told it to do was that you cut down one, and it says, great, you want 6 of me. Those of you who've ever dealt with dandelions know that they have the same logic. Okay. So when God is talking about faith like a mustard seed or faith like a dandelion. What he's talking about is thinking about faith not always as individual, but thinking about it as a communal action. Right? Dandelions literally live everywhere. Antarctica has been warming, and I saw this news article about how part of it now actually has a growing season of about 3 weeks. And they show a picture. It's a picture of moss on rocks. And way in the distance, you sort of zoom in, and there's one little yellow flower. Guess what it was? Dandelion. No one knows how it got there, but, dandelions. But see, faith is like this. We know this when we examine history. Rome tried to crush Christianity. Nazi Germany tried to crush Christianity. Communist Soviet Union tried to crush Christianity. And yet they all, no matter their tactics or technology or time period, ran into the same problem, which is, you can yank a few dandelions here and you have 12 more pop up here. You can go ahead and poison them and 34 more pop up there. You can go ahead and get rid of that and more pop up there. Dandelions, like faith, is impossible to get rid of. If you don't believe me, ask the government of China. You may say, well, dandelions can't move a mulberry bush or mulberry tree, right? I say, there's extents to every analogy. But if you start to think of faith communally, think about what faith has actually accomplished. It was faithful people in Christianity that first looked around and said, slavery is wrong, because we're neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. We are all children of God. And as Christians started to wake up to that reality, country after country across the world, slowly, consistently, sometimes it had to be violently, like in our own country, got rid of slavery. Christians did that. Faith did that. If you go around and you were to look at hospitals, just drive around, look at hospitals. You look at names of hospitals. They have names like Methodist, Episcopal, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist, right? St. Luke's. This is because in our country what happened was the faithful people, the army of dandelions, looked around and said, there are people suffering out there because they are not getting treatments that exist because there are no hospitals. You know what we should do? Build hospitals. And across this country we did. We also started social work, by the way, for those of you who don't know the history of social work. So here's the thing. Faith, when you look at it as a field of dandelions, is not just unbeatable, because there will always be more and they will always be back. But faith historically has changed the world over and over and over again. But the key to the strength of faith is that faith is not a lone thing. Faith is strong only when it is a communal thing. See, the real strength of that dandelion, the moment the gardener most fears, is not the first dandelion to appear. It's the first one when you walk by and you realize you've missed it the entire time, and it's no longer white, it just has the little ring because you know it's sent out all its seeds. That's the moment you know you've lost the war. Right? What we as church do when it comes to faith formation, what places like ECEC does, what places like Sunday school does, what places like Hub Theology does, what places like adult education does, it's in those moments where those seeds are scattered to the wind, in which we've germinated, prepared, and gotten those kids or even adults ready. And then they graduate, they go out, and they become one more dandelion in the world, which is then called to continue the process. See, core to who we are as Christians is living the faith, knowing the faith. But the strength comes from passing on the faith, from generation to generation, place to place. So as you go out today, I want you in your prayer life. If you don't have one, you should get one. Highly recommend it. Ask yourself, how do you think of faith? Do you think of it as a lone, giant sequoia stretching to the heavens, strong and mighty, but easily cut down and made into firewood? Or do you see faith as a communal act, as a never-ending, always growing, never defeated field of dandelion?